This video is going to show a little bit about the CJ4 Working Title Mod for Flight Sim 2020. I was excited to get this mod to work because in real life I fly the Citation XLS Plus. It has the same Proline 21 avionics along with the same FMS 3000 by Collins. The people behind this mod have done a phenomenal job so far. It's not perfect, but it's so much better than what we've seen so far in Flight Sim 2020. It's very close to the real thing. I already have the approach loaded. I'm just changing some stuff on the lower and upper menu to make it look the way that I'm used to it looking in the actual airplane with the real avionics. All I did was the upper menu, I changed it to FMS text, and the lower menu, change it to present position. And you can see the approach plate over on the left. It is the ILS runway 1 left to Kansas City MCI. And we are going to do the ILS approach, but we're going to use V-Nav for a little bit of assistance to make things really easy. So I'm going to show you a little bit on how to do that. You can see we have 6,000 set in the altitude selector. To make VNAV work, we have to do a couple things first. One thing we have to do is tell it how low we want it to go. So we look up here at the approach plate, 2,600 feet, which is where we intercept the glide slope. So we're going to set in 2,600 feet. And after we set in 2,600 feet, we're going to press the VNAV button. And when using VNAV, you want to make sure the points in the FMS with the altitudes match those on the approach plate. And the same thing applies if you're doing an arrival. All you're doing is setting in the bottom altitude on the arrival, the last altitude you'll hit. So you notice we do have ship position on the approach plate thanks to Navigraph. However, it did not record correctly on my iPad, but it will catch up as we go. So right there I press VNAV, and right there the flight mode enunciator changed. We now have V out and path. Basically what that means, the FMS has figured out the angle we need to descend and the rate we need to descend to hit the next waypoint. So from there it derives a top of descent. So you can see on the MFD, TOD, that's top of descent. That's where the airplane's going to start to descend. And you can see this little pink diamond starting to come down. And that little pink diamond actually has a name. It's called a V-Nav deviation pointer. And just like a glide slope on an ILS approach that takes you to the runway on a 3-degree glide slope, this is doing the same thing. It's taking us down to that waypoint at a 3-degree glide path. So when that pink diamond centers, the airplane's going to start to descend. It's going to work out the descent rate, and it's going to hit Dashy intersection at 5,000 feet. You'll also notice the cyan pointer on the PFD. And that is actually the localizer. You can see the course is 011, and then you can see the course on the approach plate is also 011. Another cool feature this mod gives us the ability to figure landing distance in the FMS just like we do it in the real airplane. I've pressed the perf and approach button, and right now I'm just entering in the information, and you can see the landing field length 3741. It actually gives us landing information and also gives the VAP and VREF speed. And it also does change based on weight, and it changes based on engine anti-ice on or off, and it also will change the landing distance for a wet runway, which I've selected because it's raining. So as we approach 5,000 feet, watch up here. Watch this 5,000 turn to 4,000. That 4,000 foot number comes from Wampau intersection. We need to cross that at 4,000 feet. And that number is actually called the flight plan target altitude. That's going to change based on us crossing each waypoint and what the altitude is at the next waypoint. That's what the VNAV computer is going to try and figure out. So now it's looking at that 4,000 foot number based on our current altitude and speed, and figuring out how fast we need to descend to get to that, and it's figured that out at about 900 feet a minute. Another thing with VNAV, you can see we've got the two altitudes, the 2,600 and the 4,000. VNAV is going to go down to this altitude, but it will not go below this altitude. You'll also notice this arc over here on the MFD. And that is called the Altitude Select Range Indicator. What that really means, the white arc is where you're going to hit 2,600 feet at the current rate of descent. And we can see we passed Wimpao. The next altitude is 3,000 feet. And with this, there's a few ways we can tell we pass a waypoint. One way is to look at the PFD. You can see the next waypoint and the distance counting down to it. Another way is on the MFD up here. The point we just passed turns blue, and you can see the distance that we are currently from it. Also on the MFD, you can see the next 3 waypoints. It's got Miser, Jersey, and MCI, the airport. And the other thing I like about this page, it shows you your approximate fuel you're going to land at the destination, and then also tell you your approximate landing weight. Another thing this does, as it does in real life, when you select the ILS approach, it automatically tunes the localizer frequency. As you can see right there, 110.5. In the FMS 3000, you also tune radio frequencies in the FMS. You have the tune page. So like I just typed in 128.2. You do not have to type in 128.20. You can just type in the 282, the 282, and put it in COM1, and it'll go where it needs to go automatically. We also have a lateral deviation display. In FMS mode, we have pink needles, and you'll notice the display up here is also pink. And since we are doing an ILS approach, I have to switch the nav source to localizer, and when you switch to localizer, we'll get green needles right there. And you'll also notice up here the indicator turned green. Now we have the localizer here, and we have the localizer here on the lateral deviation display. And on the vertical deviation display, we have the glide slope deviation pointer. Now we're doing an ILS approach just like the default aircraft can do without the working title mod. A few minutes ago when we went into the FMS and figured out our computations for landing, approach speeds, and landing distance, you can now see those speeds up here on the airspeed tape. And while you're reading the copyright notice I'm required to put on the screen, we're going to fast forward a little bit through the landing, get off the runway, and go over one more cool feature that this mod has to offer. And this mod does do a lot more. It will do holds. You can do a hold just like you do in the real airplane. They've, like I said before, they've done a fantastic job with it. And you can't beat it for being free. I would pay money for something like this. It's that good. So one more of many features is if you hit the checklist button, you get checklists for each phase of flight. Here to scroll through and then push the knob to actually select it, and then once you're in that checklist, push the knob to advance to the next item once you've completed it. And I honestly did not fly the CJ4 very much prior to having this new mod, so I don't know for sure if this checklist was entered or not, but I do not think it was, but I could be wrong, so don't hold me to it if I am wrong, but I don't think it was there. But either way, it's cool to have on here. And if you like this video, stay tuned. I'm going to do some more of these in the near future. I've been using the FMS 3000 in the current airplane, one of the current airplanes I fly, and in previous airplanes I've used the Collins FMS 6100s. They're all very similar, but I want to show everybody a little bit more of what these things will actually do. And the CJ4 also actually has updated performance. Previously, this thing flew like a space shuttle on steroids. It just took off. It had so much power, it wasn't even close to realistic, and that's one of the reasons why I never touched it in Flight Sim 2020. But now they've fixed it. It's one of the better airplanes with this mod. Without this mod, it's still kind of eh. But with the mod, I think it's absolutely fantastic. This is the most realistic airplane on the game, in my opinion, as far as overall functionality is concerned. The TBM and the GA airplanes are still good, but this one I think is fantastic with this mod. And I just want to say thank you to the people that made it, and I will be putting a link in the description on where to get this.